Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Or if it's your first time, welcome to my channel. My name is Marlene and I talk about eating disorder recovery and everything related to healing the relationship with your own body, with food and with movement. And today we're going to talk about a topic that I think is not being talked about enough. I've recently heard from several of my clients something like, but I was never in a bigger body, or I was never fat. And I remember having the same thought when I was going through recovery. I was like, I was never in a bigger body. Even before I had an eating disorder, I was always known as the person who was in a smaller body. And so I was extremely afraid to go into overshoot weight, not only because I was scared as hell that it wouldn't go down, that my extreme hunger wouldn't go down, that I develop another eating disorder, but also because I was so scared of giving up that identity. So, of course, the skinny identity is something that a lot of people probably know. People with disordered eating, people with an eating disorder, but maybe also people who have been a certain body type their whole life, and then they enter their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, or whenever it happens, and their body changes. And at the same time, I've talked to people and I've worked with people who are like, I was always in a bigger body until I developed an eating disorder, and now I'm so afraid of letting that go because of the experiences I had in a bigger body, or because of the feelings I remember seeing myself in the mirror or on pictures. And it is super important to understand that this is all which is happening is in your head. And I'm not saying that people who are in an actual bigger body imagine certain things. Unfortunately, we do live in an environment and in a society where like certain body types are just being treated in another way. But I do talk about the fear of letting go of a certain body type for yourself. Because oftentimes when these people do a reality check, it's actually nothing that anyone else is concerned about. When I was going through recovery, nobody was like, but didn't you used to be another body type, like even before your eating disorder? Nobody even remembered that. I was the person who remembered that and who also connected certain memories with that. For me, it was always missing the time before my eating disorder, because it was also the time before certain things in my family happened, before like other things in my life happened that didn't even have to do with my eating disorder. But I missed that high school time where things felt so much lighter, so much that I automatically thought I have to get back to that high school body, which of course wasn't possible for me because it was 10 years later, but it was like so much in my head. Another thing is the identification itself. Some people identify with their sick body, some people identify with a quote-unquote athletic body, and again, it's oftentimes way more about what we think we get from that identification, whether it is affection from the outside, whether it is attention, positive or negative, whether it is, how we see ourselves. Some people have very strict rules for themselves. They might look at their friends and family and find all the body types beautiful, but they're like, I could never accept myself in that body. In fact, that is probably one of the sentences I hear the most when I talk to clients or to patients in the clinic that I'm working at about why it is so hard for them to let go of their sick body. And I'm asking them, do you think that other people only can be beautiful if they are in a sick body? And they're like, no, but I know that I can't see myself as pretty because the standards the eating disorder set for themselves are so high and so disordered. But the good news is that you can always work on that. I personally had extremely disordered standards for myself. I looked at my sisters, I looked at my friends, I looked at family members, and I was like, they look amazing. I don't think they look bad. But I had certain standards for myself, and so I thought, if I don't look sick, I can't look good, or I can't accept myself. Because emotionally, there was so much more attached to that. There was so much more in terms of attention, in terms of control, in terms of like showing myself a certain thing, and then also certain emotions that I connected to, being in a different body. Because oftentimes, and I remember that, oftentimes we do see, for instance, a picture of ourselves. And I have like one certain situation from my high school graduation, which was when I already struggled with an eating disorder, but it was not visible yet. And I remember seeing that picture when I was in the depth of my eating disorder and showing it to my older sister and being like, I can never look that way again. I looked horrible. I could never accept myself. And she looked at the picture and she looked at me and she was like, could it be that you just have so many negative emotions and memories that you connect with that time because you felt very lonely? And back then I honestly couldn't see it. I was like, no, it's because it looks horrible. Now I look at that picture and there is nothing wrong with that picture. Now I'm like, I don't even know why I worried, but I also do know because I understand that she was right. When I graduated from high school, there was a lot going on and I felt very unsafe, I felt very insecure. And so these were probably the underlying emotions. And again, I don't want to invalidate anyone's feeling. I do understand how freaking hard it is to go from a certain body size or body type that you're used to, whether that is an outcome of an eating disorder or whether it was your body type when you were a kid or a teenager. I do understand how hard bodily changes are. Because for our brain, it is so hard to grasp. It feels so weird to look in the mirror or to see yourself on a picture and be like, oh, this is what I look like. I don't even know what I look like anymore because my body is changing. And I think a lot of people can actually relate to that, me included. I remember in recovery, that was one of the hardest things for me. I'm actually going to make another video about pictures in recovery because that's also a very, very big one. But it was the hardest thing for me to like see videos or pictures of myself or even see myself in the mirror or like grabbing other sizes because it all felt so weird. It is one of the most confusing things on earth to go through bodily changes. For a lot of people, minor bodily changes are already hard when they struggle with an eating disorder, but oftentimes when we come, especially from a restrictive eating disorder, we have to let go of that restriction and therewith we have to accept that our body will change. And oftentimes our body will also change more than we would like to. I remember I had a certain number in my mind and I was like, okay, if my body goes up to there, it would be okay. It would still be higher than it was before, but I could accept it. But my body had other plans. My body was like, I'm not gonna stop here. I need way more energy. And so my body went up here to a number that I never really thought I could accept myself with. And I'm not gonna lie, it was hard. I actually stepped on the scale once which was a mistake because it really emotionally set me back. I still continued to eat, but it was something that was very triggering for me. But I still continued to do it, but it was hard. But numbers are also just numbers. And to tell that to somebody who's in recovery or who struggles with an eating disorder can probably feel like, no, they're not. They mean so much more. And I do get that because I understand and I remember how much numbers used to mean for me. But in the end, it is true. It is just a number. So the approaches for this are like very, very widely spread. Of course, I think it's always makes sense to, first of all, look at beliefs and look at where is that belief coming from? Why do you think you cannot be in a bigger body? Is it something that somebody said to you once? Is it a past experience? Is it the family you grew up in? Is it your own beauty standards? There are like many, many reasons. And the next one is, of course, to also work on the identity. Because, as I said before, the identity plays a big role. If you identify as a person who was never in a bigger body or who, was always skinny or who was always thin, it is completely important and mandatory to work on that and to look at who are you like outside of your body? Who is this person who's currently recovering? Does recovery make you a stronger person? What does it make you feel if I say that you're strong for recovering? Because sometimes even that can trigger people and be like, I don't want to be strong. So I cannot give you the number one tip that helps to cope with that. But I can tell you that you're not alone in that thinking, which is always a sign for me that it's the eating disorder speaking. Because if 10 different people tell me, either I was never in a bigger body or I'm afraid to just like be in a bigger body for some time because then I like lose my history of never being in a bigger body. And it's like 10 different people with 10 different histories. It is normally the eating disorder speaking. Let me know in the comments if that is something that you're struggling with. Let me know if you have any other questions as to that. I really hope that video just helps you to feel a little bit more seen and a little bit more heard and to understand that it is possible to step back from that thought pattern because I've seen it in many people and I've experienced it myself. It is possible. I survived being in a bigger body for some time. I survived going through recovery, even though before I started recovery, it was something that I never thought I could do. And so can you. Recovery will make you a stronger and more resilient person. And I always like to mention this because I've seen it so many times. People who actually go through recovery and fully recover are normally the people that tend to have an even better relationship with food and their body because they've been through so much and they understand their own body so much. And a lot of people in the late stages of recovery actually get this gratitude for their body, which can be super hard to feel when you just started recovery and when you're only a couple of months or maybe a year in. But a lot of people after a couple of years become so grateful, and they're like, my body healed so much, and I didn't even know that my body could heal that way. And so now I will do anything to make sure my body is heard. I hope that's a little motivator at the end. Let me know if you have any other questions, and otherwise I will see you in the next one.